Good morning and welcome to Twist Gaming. I am here live at Origins 2018 in lovely Columbus, Ohio, bringing you all of the fantastic convention coverage. And I have with me today some really awesome special designers. This is Mandy, and this is Jordan.
Got it.
And they have brought me their new design that's being published under IDW. And I will let you guys hop right into it.
Sure. Well, thank you. So yes, this is our latest game. It's called Death Note Confrontation. If you're familiar with Death Note storyline, then you'll know where that's from. But it's essentially a two-player asymmetrical deduction kind of dice rolling game that takes place in two notebooks. And so the whole game is played out in notebooks that each player has. If you're familiar with the Death Note story, then you know that it's about a killer named Kira who has a Death Note, and he uses that to kill criminals. And then there's an investigator, L, who using his notes and interviews to catch where Kira is. So the whole game takes place in your notebooks.
Okay, let's switch over to the
Yeah.
components.
Yeah, so you can see that there's more than just a couple of notebooks and some cards here. There's some other components. The idea is that as you play the game, Kira will use his notebook to determine where he is by drawing a card to determine which location he lives at. He'll use the provided screen to mark off where he is, and then if you're familiar with the story, you'll know that there is this portion where L is using the news stations and controlling which criminals show up on the news, because he knows that Kira is watching the news to determine which criminals to kill. So this takes place where L is kind of manipulating which criminals show up on the news,
Okay.
and then sussing out where Kira is based on that.
Yeah, and I can talk a little bit about how the game plays out. There are two phases. There's a daytime phase, which we call the chase.
Okay.
And that's where Kira's going to be going around town. He's actually observing crimes in person. And so he's choosing a location he's going to visit for the day, either location A or location B.
Okay.
At the same time, Detective L is going to try to guess what location Kira is going to be at.
Okay.
He's trying to, show up in the same place. He's following some leads. He doesn't know exactly where he's going to show up. So this is phase one, where there's a little bit of head-to-head. You're going to secretly choose, are you going to go to location A or B? If they choose the same place, Detective L has succeeded at that head-to-head,
Okay.
and he gains some information about a suspect that Kira is not. So he's able to eliminate some suspects because he showed up to the right place.
Okay.
However, if Kira ends up sort of outsmarting Detective L and going somewhere that he is not, then Kira gets to earn the points for the kill that he made in that location.
Okay, so for the bombing location we have here, that is 3 points, and for the shooting location, it's 2 points. And let me just
Yes.
bring this up a little closer so that
And
you
this
can
is
kind
the
of
part,
see.
this is probably Jordan's favorite part. He loves this
This
sort of
is my
head-to-head,
favorite part.
I think he's going to go for the 3 points because that's better.
Right.
But he's going to think I think he's going to go for the 3 points.
So I'm
going to
go for the 2 points.
And it's really exciting to kind of see what people do
knowing
there
what
and-
your knowing what your opponent is trying to do.
If you've
Exactly.
seen Princess Bride, that moment of, oh, I knew that I would go there, so you knew I would not. If you've seen the series, you know that that's a big part of, like, each character spends a ton of time trying to get into the other one's mind and outplay what they knew that they would know that they wouldn't know. And so there's a really fun game that develops around such a simple thing of, do I go for more points or less points?
Yeah.
And there's some pretty big consequences to that. So
Yeah.
that's
So
phase
that's
one.
just the daytime.
Okay.
So all of that just occurs during the chase phase. Then we begin the night phase, which is called the nightly news. As Detective
Very
L,
cute.
he's going to roll these dice, which tell him what types of crimes he's going to place on the news. So he mentioned that Detective L has figured out he can manipulate the nightly news,
Okay.
put some different crimes out there, feature different criminals, and by doing that, he's able to then, he'll announce 3 crimes on the news. He's going to use his map to determine, okay, I've got a bomber, I've got a shooting, and then a knife, let's say.
Let me
Those
just
are the
grab
3
one of
types.
these just so
Sure.
that you can see the nice little detail right
Yeah, they
there.
turned out really, really well.
Yep, and they correspond to crimes on the map. So Detective L and Kira have the same map. All of the criminals are on here with numbers. So Detective L rolls the dice. He then chooses 3 criminals he's going to feature on the news
Okay.
by announcing the 3 numbers. So the 3 criminals. then Kira's going to respond by choosing which of those criminals he will kill. Now, Jordan mentioned he has some killing rules, so he has an unlimited amount of kills within his local area.
Okay.
He can only make 2 kills outside of his local area.
Okay.
So he's got to decide who to kill based on the 3 on the news. You know, he will reveal information about his location eventually if a lot of kills are made near his home.
Right.
So he's trying to be strategic in which criminals he picks off so that he doesn't give away his location. Elle will be using the same deduction tool here to see where the kills are taking place and start narrowing down who Kira is.
Very, very cool. So, what's the win condition here? This is a points game. We're going in rounds, day, and the nightly news, day again. Is it a set number of rounds? Is it a particular event that brings us to our end game?
It's a great question. So it's points-based. So one of the neat things about each of these different types of crimes, with the severity of the crime, is the more points for killing a criminal. So you feel better, you get more points for killing a mass bomber or mass shooter than a local stabber. So you get 3 points for killing a bomber, 2 for killing a shooter, and 1 for killing someone who was involved in a stabbing. You have to, as Kira, my win condition is to get to 15 points.
Okay.
So one of the things that's kind of baked into the math of the game is that the more points you're getting, by the bombers are going to reveal more about you. So it's a risk. Do I want to go for more points but reveal myself a little more? But if I can get to 15 points before Elle knows who I am, then I've won the game. If Elle can deduce get all the way down to he knows it's one person, he's eliminated everyone else, then Elle can win the game. And so there is this piece of how far along is
Can
the other
you
player.
get before I can finish
Right.
what I'm my goal?
There's also another element that can end the game, which is if the case goes cold. So Elle has to give us some people on the news that we can kill. If he's giving us people that are outside of our parameters, the case starts to go cold. And so if the case goes cold by having 2 nights where no kills are happening, then Kira wins as well. So there's kind of a couple of different ways. And then to kind of piggyback on that, the win conditions change as you get deeper into the book. So chapter 1 is fairly straightforward. A little more complicated if you get back to chapter 2. You can see that this gets significantly
More
involved.
complex.
There's a hard mode.
There's a hard
if you
mode.
master the base game, which
So
we've just
keep
kind of gone over.
flipping back
There's
to
a
here.
chapter 2.
There we go. Oh, that's
There it is.
crazy.
And so the win condition changes. You only have you have to get to 20 points as Kira, and you have more quiet nights, and so that kind of changes a little bit.
Okay.
But then additionally, some other components and mechanics are added on. There's some special powers you can earn by getting apples and bribing Ryuk. If you're familiar with the series, you know what that is. But then also, Elle can gain intel and use special powers as well. So there's these kind of really neat, more complex elements to Chapter 2, with the win conditions change a touch.
Very cool. Now, I mean, the game looks absolutely phenomenal. It looks really interesting. I kind of like the almost head-to-head style with the 2-player. If I'm not familiar with Death Note in the series, what do I get out of this game as a game?
Oh yeah, I think you could absolutely jump in. You don't need to have a history or a deep knowledge of the series to enjoy the game. Understanding that there's a killer and there's a detective and you're both trying to outsmart the other, there's a lot of satisfaction in that, in knowing, I've gotten into his head and I've outwitted him and I've been able to take the win. And a lot of times what we find is when somebody plays one way, they immediately want to switch roles
And play as
and
the
play
other side.
role. And so that's a ton of fun too.
And I saw on the box that the playtime is only about 30 minutes. So it seems like a lot going in that 30 minutes, but it's nice with the 2-player games, with the shorter games, because if you're not the winner of that round, it's very quick to go and play another one. And I'm sure, like you were saying, once you're playing one character, you immediately want to play the other side.
Yeah, and games go even quicker if you're really used to it. We tend to play fast anyway, but after playing many times, we can get through it in 15 minutes. We switch, we play again.
Who
We
wins
love
the
to do that.
most?
Oh, happy wife, happy life.
That's right. Good job.
No, so we'll say this. Mandy is better at this game than me. Her brain is just tailored to deducing. During the development process, she did all the heavy lifting on So there's a lot of math in making this balanced and
Right.
also asymmetrical. She developed the system we used, the spreadsheets and everything that was needed to build out all the different maps, and then we picked the best of those maps. So she's pretty darn good at it.
Very, very cool. Yeah, I guess you don't really think about all the behind-the-scenes kind of work with the spreadsheets and the logic that has to be built out before you can make these maps. What was that like for you to design that?
It was exciting.
Yeah?
We kind of gave ourselves the constraint up front that we really wanted the game to exist within the 2 books. And so, very early on we knew there was going to be some kind of map we were both working from and using that to find the location of Kira. But it was really exciting because we had so many different versions of the map.
Right.
And it started out with different, regional areas, terrain types. I mean, it went so many different directions before we kind of landed on the different criminals. But that was a ton of fun, and kind of figuring out the math behind it, where you're randomly choosing which suspect you are as Kira.
Okay.
So your home location on the map, we
be-
wanted that to be an even probability or an even experience, that you had the same opportunity at the same amount of points based on which suspect you reached or you selected. So there was a lot there in terms of, he has to be just as far away from the high point criminals as the next suspect. So creating sort of the symmetry on the map was a big unlock. I remember when we figured that out, it was very exciting.
Harder than she's making it sound. Play with it. It's tough.
It was fun though. We enjoyed that process, and it went through a lot of iterations. And one of the early playtesting events we did, where we were working out the final details, we found that the map was just way too complex. So we ended up taking some components that were working really well and making that the focus. And that's part of why we have Chapter 1, Chapter 2, because for the players who want to jump in, they love the show, they want that experience of the head-to-head, they can learn Chapter 1 very easily, jump right in and play, and if they enjoy that experience, Chapter 2 gives them the more complex map.
And that definitely gives you more replayability there and more of a challenge. You can kind of gauge how you want to play. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, Mandy-Trin, thank you so much for swinging by and showing me the new Death Note Confrontation game that's being published by IDW. Now, the game is not out just yet.
Nope, this is the only copy.
So we have to be very careful with
No,
this.
we've been playing, and you can see there's written games that have been played in it, but it should be out July. So early July is when it should hit the street. Early to mid-July would be a good guess.
Okay. If I want to find out more about the game, about the release date, where can I pick it up? Where do I go to look?
So IDW has it on their website. There's an announcement there. If you just search Death Note Confrontation, there's been a fair number of articles written about it, kind of quoting the press release and revealing some different details and images of the game. And then I'm sure they'll have more on the website soon.
Sounds good. Well, thank you both
Thank you.
Thank you
very
so
much
much.
for stopping by.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.